Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Thank you for joining me tonight. Sorry this video is out about a day late. The reason is, a lot of the decks that I've been wanting to show off, especially for this month for Halloween, just been way too casual for me to feel comfortable showing them. There's a lot of jank in there. I like to build decks for fun, and I don't often have the money to optimize a lot of ideas, especially in the mana base. So, I want to give you guys, semi-functional decks. I don't want to just throw out, a whole bunch of creatures, a couple of support spells, and some of the worst mana bases you can imagine. That being said, one deck that I actually did manage to get under the hood with and tool around enough that I'm actually really happy with it is this one. So, in keeping in the spirit of Halloween, this is my Anje Falkenrath Madness deck. Now, Madness, as many of you might know, goes back very well with me and to my favorite set, Torment. And for those of you who may not be familiar with the mechanic, basically whenever a card with Madness is discarded, it is discarded, you pay its Madness cost instead of its normal cost, which is usually much lower, and you play the card for free. If it's a creature, it goes onto the battlefield. If it's a spell, it resolves and hits the graveyard. So Anje Falkenrath, who is from Vampire from Innistrad, House Falkenrath, she's a red and black and 1/3 haste legendary vampire. And she basically loots. Tap to discard a card and draw a card. Discarding the card happens first. And then, whenever you discard a card, if it has Madness, whether or not you play it, that's very important, untap her so you can keep doing it again. She can become a one-woman engine of madness. We all hide a little madness behind our sophistication, do we not? I love it. I love this mechanic. I've loved it since I first got into Magic, and I'm glad that they came out with a commander that was geared towards it. Now, I'm pretty sure this is 2019 because 2017 was Tribal, 2018 was the redone Planeswalker, so this should be 2019, which were keywords. There were 4 decks with keywords. Basically, a commander helping each one. There was one for Madness, there was one for Populate, there was one for Flashback. I love that deck. And then there was one for Morph. So, and this was my favorite. So this is basically an upgraded version of that deck. I added a lot of things I thought that deck was missing. I upgraded the mana base and the card quality. So, I can't wait to show this deck off to you. It's really fun. We start, as always, with the mana base. Yeah, you saw a darn Soul Ring. Of course Soul Ring's going to be here. I had to add the Midnight Hunt lands. These things are gorgeous, especially for this deck. So, you've got 9 mountains and 7 swamps. Now, the reason is there's a lot of singular non-basics that produce black mana. So, just to keep it fairly balanced, even though this does lean a little bit more into black, there's a couple more mountains than swamps. And you'll see that as we get into the non-basic lands. I also want to say, this is kept in my black and red 2020 exclusive Ultimate Guard Boulder. Perfect for Rakdos. And it's in these Dragon Shield copper mats. I consider the new apricot mats, which are a nice, handsome, bright orange for Halloween, but copper has often been associated with the color and scent of blood, so I thought it was most appropriate. Getting that out of the way. So we start with some familiar faces. Command Tower, Exotic Orchard, Foreboding Ruins. I love this thing. As you saw, there's enough basics in this deck that, more often than not, this is going to come into play untapped. Rakdos Carnarium. I like it. It gets you a little head-on curve, and, more importantly, it lets me bounce back some of the more fun come-into-play effect lands, such as Bojuka Bog and other such things. Shadowblood Ridge. I love these fixers. I hated them when I first got into Commander, but I actually really like them. Tainted Peak, another favorite from Torment. I love it. There's enough black in this deck to justify it. Temple of Malice, when I really appreciated this one in this deck, because when you're going to be drawing a ton, just helping out a little bit with that card selection, this can help even in the late game. I already said it was in here, Bajuka Bog, never leave home without it. It's one of those toolboxes. It's as important to most black decks as a Soul Ring. Crypt of Agadim. This thing is really important because a lot of things are going to end up in the graveyard, discarded. And there's a decent amount of black-colored creatures in here, so, you know, if I have them in play, they make their use, and when they hit the graveyard, you know, they pay a little bit of an extra dividend. Mortuary Mire. Mortuary Mire and Memorial to Folly. You know, same things. They bounce stuff back to the hand from the graveyard, so either they'll get me an important permanent I need back, or another card with Madness, you know, or a creature with Madness, or just sometimes just to discard them again to help Andre. Baron Moor and Forgotten Cave. They cycle, and there's a lot of, not a lot, but there's a fair amount of discard payoffs in this deck, so it's not just Anje. Okay, so that's the thing I wanted to talk about with this deck. So she's one of those commanders that, because she's so cheap, she gets onto the battlefield very easily and frequently, but a lot of people hated on her in the original form of this deck. So I added other discard outlets and discard payoffs because originally it felt like this deck basically couldn't do anything without her, and she was constantly getting targeted with removal. So you're going to see that as the deck goes on. Temple of the False God. 2 mana, you know, always fun. Rick's Mahdi. Hitting both players with a discard effect is nice because I want to discard my own stuff, and usually my opponent doesn't want to do that. Again, just on a smaller scale of targeting a player. Ash Barrens, again, its discard effect is a payoff on its own. You know, Myriad Landscape and Evolving Wilds, you know, standard, you know, fetching, you know, low-class fetching. On to the artifacts. So, been seeing it in the background for a bit. Soul Ring, Rakdos Signet, pretty standard Arcane Signet, you know, very obvious trio of usual suspects there. Key to the City. I like this because it gives me the ability to get some more card advantage, but also it makes creature unblockable for the quote-unquote cost of discarding a card. Oh, the horrors with this deck. Well, yeah, the horrors with this deck. Everybody has Madness. Armillary Sphere, you know, a nice go-get-em for 2. Grimoire of the Dead. I actually just took this very copy out of my zombie deck because I finally got my Phyrexian Altar in. So that evil combo of Phyrexian Altar and Gravecrawler and like Noxious Ghoul, that's finally going to happen. I like it because, again, the cost of discarding a card is good, and if I manage to get this off, it'll be really nice. But, you know, it's not the worst thing in the world. It's helping me, and the extra payoff is just bonus. You're going to see that a lot in this. These are going to be nice, but if I get more out of it, awesome. Harnfell Horn of Bounty. I know there's a god on the other side. And Burgi. That's right, God of Storytelling. Now, Burgi, you know, whenever I cast a spell, I get a red mana, and creatures can boast, although there's no boast in this deck. It's really for the horn. Discarding card, exiling cards that I can play. Just a little bit of extra gas when I need it. Often a game-winning moment there. Planeswalkers. Liliana of the Veil. Oh, my copy is so damaged. You know, each player discards a card. You know, I'm not going to say it again. I like it. Forcing sacks is awesome because it gets around a lot of targeted protection. And, you know, if I can manage to get the ultimate, that's nice. But, you know, just keep that discard engine rolling. Liliana Vess, first verse, same as the first, although it is really nice to fetch up what you really need. If you're not actually drawing a card with Madness to trigger the untap effect, it can be nice to just get one. And again, with a bunch of full graveyards late in the game, if the ultimate happens, nice, but I'm not reliant on it. Getting more cards, losing life for it, and destroying creatures. All good stuff. Finally, we are on to the creatures. This is a creature-heavy deck, but it's not that much of an aggro deck. It's more a lot of ways I want to just put up massive walls and just hide behind them. Sanitarium Skeleton. So it does not have madness, but this thing can come back over and over and over again if I got the mana. So, you know, I love this as a discard or sack outlet card in a lot of decks. You guys saw that with my demon deck I just posted. Asylum Visitor. I like this thing because it helps me out if I have no cards in hand. Otherwise, it's a nice madness trigger. Dismissive Pyromancer. I really like this thing. Not only does it loot on its own, again, adding more discard abilities in case someone shuts down Anje is important. Unfortunately, this doesn't have haste, but, you know, just getting that discount engine going and sacrificing Dismissive Pyromancer, I can just nail something for 4. Nothing like going all Flame Tongue Kavu on something if I need to. Rixmati Reveler. This is another card I love better in the late game because I can loot normally when I play it, but, you know, if Spectacle ends up happening like towards the end, you know, discarding my hand, you know, most of it's going to be madness based, so most of it's going to be castable, and then I get 3 cards from my troubles. Burnished Heart Gifts gets me ahead on the mana base. It's a nice utility card I like in most of my decks. Doomed Necromancer. I feel like this thing is kind of grandfathered in. I just remember this being so good back in the day. I'm not sure if it's as good as I want it to be in Commander, or if it's just nostalgia goggles, but, you know, I have a soft spot for it. Ronnie Registar. I remember the first time I ever saw this thing, I instantly said, this deck, zombies, or madness. That's what this is for. This wants me to do the thing this deck is all about, and it's a 6/7/6 for 3. Whew. I had to, there was an interruption in the middle of the video last time, so this is my second time going through this. Sorry if I'm getting a little tired. Plaguecrafter. I like it because it can sacrifice creatures or planeswalkers. And obviously it can target itself, so I'm pretty free. Unfortunately, that's probably the only downside of this card is I can't target myself for a discard. You know, it has to target itself instead of me discarding. But still, it's a nice way of getting around planeswalkers. Anje's Ravager. This isn't always my favorite card, but late game it is very effective at getting those end of game ramping into card discard madness effects. Squee! Much like my friend the Sanitarium Skeleton, Squee is all about dying, being sent to the graveyard, and then coming right back for free. I love this thing. I utterly love this thing. It just helps out in this deck specifically. Strongkirk Occultist. I like the madness trigger, but also, you know, he lets you play cards from the top of your library for free. So, you know, just not vital, but a useful little weapon. Speaking of vital, I love this guy. I build these decks out of what I have in my collection. I don't have a massive budget for Magic. I do this because I love to, you know. So I don't always have every card I want. For example, I really want that Mirror Wing Tyrant from Midnight Hunt because I think that thing will go perfect in this deck. But if I can find more cards like this, I'm sure they're out there, but I haven't found them in my digging. But just discard payoffs. This deck does need more discard payoffs. And it can discard itself. It can loot itself if it attacks. But really, it's about, well, Anje's doing her thing and everybody else is discarding cards and madness is happening and Squeeze coming back discarding. He's just eating away at each opponent. I love this guy for that reason. Magus of the Wheel. I can't afford a Wheel of Fortune. Here we go. Iron Crag Pyromancer. Another one that's just going to be hitting things and spitting fire. It's a 0/4 for 3, so it's a nice blocker, but really, you know, I'm going to cast the first card with Madness, draw another card, and probably play a spell after that. I expect to be playing more than one spell per turn, so this thing is just going to be lightning bolting all sorts of stuff. And it's any target, so it can go after a planeswalker, it can go after a player, it can shoot down creatures. I love that versatility. Big Game Hunter. If this Madness wasn't one, he'd probably not make the cut. But his Madness is one, and it works. when it works, it works. When it doesn't, it's not like I wasted the card completely. Olivia, mobilized for war. I love her because, you know, I discard a card whenever any other creature's getting played, so it's automatic. And then, not only does that creature get haste, but it gets a counter. And there's a couple of counter synergies in this deck, but it's just a nice extra for discarding cards. Neheb the Worthy. There's a few Minotaurs in this deck, like my Glinthorn. And the main thing, obviously, is when he deals combat damage, each player discards a card. I want to be discarding cards. Sorry about that. My throat's a little dry. I want to be just doing everything he wants. And if I have almost no cards in my hand, he just gets better. And he improves the other few Minotaurs in this deck. I wonder if Minotaur discard is going to become a common thing with their species. Got to look up the Theros Minotaur, see if any of those do that. Scare Tiller and Solemn Simulacrum. Solemn Simulacrum, great utility in the early game, gets a card, or gets a land, draws a card when it dies, or he can be discard fodder late game. Scare Tiller, again, discard fodder late game, but also, if I have to discard lands I really didn't want to discard, he can get them back when he gets tapped. So, I like that he has a lot of use in this particular deck. There are cards in this deck, such as the discard lands like Baron Moor. I hate those cards normally, but they have purpose in this deck. This is basically Gravedigger with Madness 2, so I love it. If you have even one card that can any card that can discard a card in your deck, run this thing. Run it instead of Gravedigger. Actually, thinking about this is almost worthy of my zombie deck. My actual primary zombie deck is that good. Nightshade Assassin. There's a lot of black cards in this deck to really make this fun. And I can often find ways to make my hand real big. Other than that, it's a 2-1 for 2 with Madness. Well, it's a 2-1 for 4, but I intend to pay the Madness. Yawgmoth. So I said there were some other cards that interact with counters, So for 2 black mana, discard a card, which I want to do, and proliferate. So cards like Liliana or Olivia ready for mobilized for war looks better. He's got pro-humans. And of course he can sack things to give other things -1/-1 and draw cards. So in many little ways he helps this deck. Skyfire Phoenix. Anje is cheap enough that she will get cast often, and this will come back again and again and again. One of the first real versions of this deck I customized had way too many Phoenixes in them. I might add a couple more if I've added too many discard outlets, but that remains to be seen in practical testing. Neheb Dreadhorde Champion, another Minotaur. Whenever he nails a guy, discard any number of cards and get mana for them. I love it. Again, and also one of the beefier creatures in this deck, especially if other Neheb is on the field. Bloodhall Priest. Oh, yeah. And with those discards, Glinthorn Buccaneer gets better. If I can get all 3 of these Minotaurs on the field at once, it's game. Just Glinthorn, man. I want more cards like him. Whenever Bloodhall Priest enters the battlefield, if you have no cards in hand, it does 2 damage to any target. And it gets Madness. So, I really like that. Another, like Hassan, those are just ways to punish my enemy if I do, in fact, have no cards in hand. I've considered getting another Hazoret for this deck. Hazoret might be a great card for this. Chainer Nightmare Adept. You guys have heard me wax poetic about how much I love Torment, how much I love this character, how much I love that era. He had to be in here, and he's good for this deck. Discard a card, cast a card from a graveyard. I can either put the card I want there, or get rid of something I don't want, or even have Madness and then play it as I discard it. There are so many ways that he's versatile for this deck. I took out Grimoire Vec, who came in this precon. Actually, this is the Modern Horizons version. But I took Grimoire Vec because he wasn't really fitting the way it was going, but I took Chainer out of the deck and then ended up putting a copy back in because it just works so well. Speaking of working so well, another discard payoff, Bone Miser. depending on what I discard, I get something extra. I love this. I can also just ramp out like crazy, or make an army and protect myself or go wide, or just draw cards. I love this. It does not matter if it's madness or not. It doesn't matter if I pay it or not. I can just get so much value out of this. So basically, imagine this. I cycle that one land. I still get... I cycle Forgotten Caves or Barren Moor. I still get the 2 mana, and I draw a card. Madness. Not the best card in the deck, but such a cheap madness cost that I had to include it. Archfiend of Ifnir, another great payoff. Cycling or discards just nails an opponent with -1/-1 counters. I love -1/-1 counters because they're permanent and they're obnoxious, and they key off our good friend Yawgmoth. He proliferates, it just gets worse. Flare of the Hatebound. There's a lot of things that are going to be happening, a lot of graveyard interaction, especially with Trainers or, the Doom Necromancer. So, also he has Undying himself, so he's not useless by himself. But if a really good discard payoff comes along, this is probably one of the first on the chopping block. Malphagor. Oh, this thing is fun in this deck. This guy is really swingy. Making everybody sacrifice a ton of cards at once. This is just so much fun. I love this guy. And he's a 6/6 flyer. Archfiend of Spite. Last creature in the deck, and just 6/6 madness for 5. And just whenever he gets dealt damage, an opponent's source's controller lose that much life unless they sacrifice that many permanents. Oof. Even killing him through damage hurts. I love it. So those are all the creatures. I'm actually impressed with how fast I'm going here. Let's see. So Curse of Fool's Wisdom. Now, a lot of people love to talk about how enchantments don't affect the board when they hit the field. This will do everything as a madness trigger. So I like that it actually helps me gain cards as well as hit the board. Besides, it's just a fun little card to pay 4/4 and then, just annoy people. I'm already guaranteed, a net 4 life difference when my opponent's turn starts. Eldest Reborn. I'm not sold on sagas, even though that art is beyond gorgeous. But I like this as a distraction. Because it hits everybody, it earns its keep, but I really like how a lot of people go out of the way to target this thing, often not targeting my real threats, which they should be. And if they don't target it, I get a lot of stuff off of it. So it earns its keep, but again, I think it's one really good discard outlet coming out, or me finding it away from being taken out of the deck. It's a luxury item. Faith of the Devoted, payoffs, just adding life loss and life gain to all the cards I discard. Love that. Free discard. Discard 2, get a zombie. Any other deck, I hate this card. Any other deck, there are better ways for me to get zombies. But in this deck, it's just gravy. Call to the Netherworld. Madness for free. Basking Root Wallow was insane because its casting cost was free back, or its madness was free back in the day. And getting back any number of powerful creatures is going to be amazing. Feed the Swarm. Any deck that doesn't have green or white or any other enchantment-based destruction, every black and red deck needs one of these. Murderous Contempt. Compulsion. Wow. Murderous Compulsion. I really am getting tired. Destroy target tapped creature. Madness cost is the same, so it's just a nice trigger, and it kills something. Mire and Misery. Speaking of enchantment hate, this is nice because this makes a lot of enchantments go away under the right board states, or it can at least clear problem creatures. Probably wouldn't make the cut if it wasn't for the fact that it hits every opponent, so it's useful. Avacyn's Judgment. Madness X. Man, I love this thing. If it wasn't for the fact that my copy of Under the Floorboards, which came in this precon, is in the sideboard of my zombie deck. Yes, that zombie deck. Under the Floorboards would be in here. If I can afford another copy, I'll probably take out the Eldest Reborn and just throw that in here because I love that card too. But Madness X is just a nice closer. Widespread damage, whether it's to clear the air for Malphagor, or clear the ground for other attackers, or to finish off an opponent's life total, or stop a planeswalker. You know, permanents or players. I love it when I can target anything. Dreadbore. My non-madness spells are going to be really low CMC. You're going to find that real quick. I don't want these bogging down the plan. So you're not going to find, like... Yeah, watch me... Wow. You're gonna find one expensive card that I was about to say wasn't in this deck, but yeah. So Dreadbore, just nice and cheap. Collective Defiance, it's cheap, but I can escalate, and I really like that. So, you know, discarding all cards in their hand, then drawing that many, I can do that to my opponent or me. You know, damage to all sorts of things. I really like the versatility of this card for the price. Siphon Mind, again, whacking everybody. This is similar to Mire and Misery. I like that it nails everybody, and I get cards for it. You know, Malevolent Whispers. If this didn't have a madness if this wasn't a madness payoff, this is another one. If I can find a better card with madness, this is probably getting taken out. Terminal Agony. I saw this Modern Horizons. I said, I know what deck that's going in. Alchemist's Greeting. Why not? Flame Tongue Kavu, something for 2 mana. You know, and again, get all my payoffs. Beacon of Unrest. Sometimes I just need to get an opponent's big thing to help me. I love this card because it shuffles back into my deck. I love to use the beacons whenever I can. In Garrick's Wake, boy, was I about to look like an idiot. You're not going to see something super expensive like In Garrick's Wake. This is more of a panic button for me. I don't intend to play this. In a way, I might end up sideboarding it out. You know, this particular deck does not have a sideboard, but I'll make one for stuff like this. Chaos Warp. Sometimes you just need to bury something in your opponent's deck. And it gets around destruction. Rakdos Charm, another just nice utility card. Fiery Temper and Violent Eruption. I need to find a pair of Torment originals because I love the Torment versions of this card. You know, 2 of the original Madness burn spells. I loved them then. I love them now. I specifically love Violent Eruption because it's one of those cards, as I said about the one zombie, Grave Scrambler. This is literally everything Gravedigger is, but better. You know? It's just that simple. Sometimes a card comes out that's just better than a previous card. And I'll always remember the Torment Fat Pack description of this card. So what happens when you take Pyrotechnics, make it an instant, lower the cost, and add Madness to boot. It's like this completely eclipsed another Magic card in existence. That's what I love about it. Dread Withering. Destroy target non-black creature. I hate those words so much because I lived with them. But it's a Madness payoff, and I'm willing to suffer for a lot. And it's a 1 mana Madness payoff. Probably one of the few Madness cards, along with Malevolent Whispers, that they're just... Both of these are one good new Madness card away from getting taken out of the deck. So, that is my Madness deck. I'm going to put a link in the description below to the TappedOut site, which you will see a printed list for those of you who would rather see that, or if you want to clarify something. So thank you for joining me, guys. You know, I had to power this out to get it done, even though there was an interruption the first time. I wanted to do it for you guys because I promised more content while I was on vacation. I'm going to try and clear up my Golgari Death Touch deck and do that on Saturday, probably Friday, Friday night into Saturday morning, because I have a crazy weekend before I go back to work for a week, and then I'm on vacation again. So I have some fun Halloween-based decks coming out soon. And again, Halloween weekend, I will be doing my favorite, probably my second most dedicated, my three favorite decks, I put effort into these, are my Mono Black Zombie deck, my Kalia deck, and the Rakdos deck. And I've been wanting a special occasion to showcase my Rakdos deck. I love that thing dearly, so that's what's going to be for Halloween. Thank you guys for joining me. You guys have no idea how hard it was to get this video done. But it was worth it for you guys. I promise you guys content. I'm a day late, but I'm just going to make good on my promise. So thank you for joining me, and thank you for all the subscribes and the views and the likes that I've been getting. It means the world to me. It's such a little thing, but it means so much. So I want to give you guys an honest to goodness thank you. And I can't wait to come back and do the next video. See you guys next time. Have a good night, you guys.